All right, y'all, this is Transitional Algebra 2.6. And 2.6 looks at graphing lines. All right, so we've already done the first method of graphing a line, which would be set up an X and Y table. We found at least two X values, and we plugged them into our equation to get the Y values. Once we had 2 points, we drew the line, and we were done. So y'all, the second method we're going to use to graph a line, this is graphing using X and Y intercepts. Okay, so the x-intercept, so I'll give you some definitions real quick. X-intercept is where the graph crosses the x-axis. So it crosses the x-axis at this point. So to be on the x-axis, the point has to have a number for the x and a 0 for the y. Remember, the x-axis is the horizontal line going across, and on that line has a y value of 0. So the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis at this point. So if you're on the vertical line, which is the y-axis, you'll have a 0 for the x value, followed by a y value, okay? So the y value tells you what point on the y-axis you're crossing, okay? So the graph using the xy intercepts, well, we need 2 points to graph. So the first thing we do, we find the x-intercept by setting y equal to 0 and solving for x. That'll give me my x value for my x-intercept, which will be x comma 0. Okay, so I'm going to find the x-intercept by setting y equal to 0 and solving for x. And then I'm going to plot this point. So once I plot that x-intercept on my graph, I got 1 point. So I need my second point. So to get the second point, I'm going to find the y-intercept by setting x equal to 0 and solving for y. That point will be 0 for the x and then some number for the y. So y'all, that's 2 things you do. So once I found the x-intercept, I plot that point. I'm going to find the y-intercept and then plot that point. Once I've plotted them 2 points, I can draw my line and be done. Okay, so let's look at some examples where we use the intercepts to graph. So y'all, what I'll do, once I get my answers, I got graph paper, we'll plot the points on my graph paper, okay? So the first one they're giving us is x minus 5 equals y. Now, y'all, this one's just backwards. That's the same thing as y equals x minus 5, okay? So first, I'm going to find my x-intercept. To find my x-intercept, I set y equal to 0. So that's going to give me x minus 5 equals 0. So remember, when you're finding the x-intercept, you set y equal to 0 and solve for x. Well, you ought to get this x over here by itself. Since we're subtracting 5 from this side, we need to add 5 to both sides. So that's going to give me my x, -5 and 5 cancel out on the left side. 0 plus 5 gives me 5. So the first point I'm going to plot is a 5 for the x and a 0 for the y value. Now we need our y-intercept. Our y-intercept, we set the x equal to 0 and solve for y. So that'll give me 0 minus 5 equals y. These are like terms on the left side, numbers minus numbers. So 0 minus 5 gives me -5 equal to my y. So that means that point is 0 for the x, because that's what we put in for the x, and -5 for our y value. So y'all, we're going to go graph that one on our graph paper. So my points are 5, 0, and 0, -5. So remember, my points were 5, 0, and 0, -5. So this is our number 1. All righty, so this was my x-intercept 5, 0, so it's got to be on the x-axis. So I go right 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And since the y value is 0, I put my dot on that 5. Now this is my y-intercept. It's going to be on the y-axis. So x is 0 here. So now I go down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Puts me at -5. At that point, if you're doing this in Math Lab, it'll draw your line and be done. Okay, so remember, plot these 2 points, draw a line, and you're done. All right, y'all, so let me turn my page. And so these first few examples, we're going to be graphing by using the intercepts. So for number 2, graph using intercepts, they're giving me x plus 3y equals 6. So I'm going to find my x-intercept first. So finding the x-intercept, I'm going to set y equal to 0. So I get x plus 3 times 0 equals 6. All right, so bring down the x plus 3 times 0 is 0. That's going to equal 6. And y'all, x plus 0 is 0. So I get x equals 6. So my x-intercept would be 6, comma, 0 for the y. Now we find the y-intercept by setting the x equal to 0. So I'm going to have 0 plus 3y equals 6. All right, y'all, 0 plus 3y is 3y equals 6. And remember, since this is being multiplied, I need a 1 in front of the y. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So by dividing, you're undoing that multiplication. So that gives me a 1y. And 6 divided by 3 is 2. So the y-intercept would be 0 for the x, 2 for the y. All right, so let's go plot our number 2. So y'all, I think I can put this right here under here. So our number 2, x-intercept is 6, 0. So that's going to be on the x-axis. Remember, this is the x and this is the y. So 6, 0, I go right 6, and 0 for the y means I stay right there. 0, 2 is my y-intercept. It's going to be on the y-axis. So 0 for the x and up 2. So y'all, at this point, Math Lab would come in and draw our line. Okay? All right, let's play up a few more of these. So this would be like number 3. 6x plus 5y equals 30. And you see, another good thing about doing these intercepts, I don't have to solve it for y first. I can just plug in for my variables and then solve them, okay? So let's find our x-intercept. set y equal to 0. So we get 6x plus 5 times 0 equals 30. All right, y'all. So I get my 6x. 5 times 0 is 0. That's going to equal 30. All right, 6x plus 0 is 6x equal to 30. So basically, when you put a 0 in for one of the letters, it pretty much cancels that letter out, okay? So then 6x divided by 6, because I want that to be a 1, equals 30 divided by 6. So y'all cancels, giving me my 1x. 30 divided by 6 is 5. So my x-intercept is 5, 0. So now I'm going to get the y-intercept by setting x equal to 0. So 6 times 0 plus 5y equals 30. All right, y'all, 6 times 0 is 0, plus my 5y equals 30. So notice I'm multiplying before I try to add any like terms, okay? But y'all, 0, 5y gives me 5y equals 30. Turn 5y into a 1y by dividing by 5. So do the right side, divide that by 5. 5 divided by 5 gives me 1y. 30 divided by 5 gives us 6. So the y-intercept, 0 for the x, 6 for the y. All right, y'all, so let me put number 3 right here where we can still see it, and I can still see my points. So our number 3, x-intercept 5, 0. So we're going to go right 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and stay on the x-axis, since that's my x-intercept. Well, y-intercept was 0, 6. So starting at 0, go up 6. And you'll mark that point on the y-axis. So remember, x-axis, y-axis. All right, so once we got our 2 points, draw the line and be done. All right, y'all, turning the page. And y'all, technically, this number 4 is doing the same thing, but they use different language on it. So let me mark off number 3 there. So number 4, they're saying f of x equals -3 minus 3x. I'm still wanting to use the intercepts, but they didn't give me a y this time. That's because this f of x is really a y. So that's y equals -3 minus 3x. They're just wanting you to realize that if they give you a function notation like this, it still means that it's the y value, okay? So now that I've replaced f of x with y, I'm going to find my x-intercept by setting y equal to 0. So I get 0 equals -3 minus 3x. All right, so to solve this, the -3 needs to be on the underside so I can get my x's by themselves. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. 0 plus 3 is 3. Them 3's cancel, and I bring down my -3x. Now, we need to make the x a 1x, so divide both sides by that -3. So y'all, 3 divided by -3 is a -1. -3x divided by -3x gives me my 1x. Remember, when these are negative variables, you got to divide by the negative also, okay? So -1 is x, so I got -1, 0 for my x-intercept. So now I need my y-intercept. So that means put a 0 in for the x, solve it for this y. So y will equal -3 minus 3 times 0. Well, y'all, that's going to equal -3. -3 times 0 is 0. And then -3 minus 0 is -3. So when my x is 0, my y is -3. All right, so we're going to plot our number 4 where I can see my intercepts here. So remember, that's my x and that's my y. So my x-intercept is -1, 0. So go left over here to -1. The y is 0, so you stay there. So that's on the x. 0, -3 is on the y-axis. So go down to -3. And we're on the y-axis and put our second point. So this one's sort of steep, but it does go downhill left to right. All right, y'all, turning my page and reset my camera. All righty. So one more of those for number 5. Graph by using the intercepts. 8y equals -16 plus 2x. All righty, so my x-intercept, I'm going to set y equal to 0. So I get 8 times 0 equals -16 plus 2x. All right, y'all, 8 times 0 is 0. So I get 0 equals -16 plus 2x. All right, the variable I'm solving for is over here with the number. So I'm going to move the number to the other side by adding 16. So I get 0 plus 16 is 16. Those 16s cancel, and all that's left is my 2x. Now make 2x into 1x by dividing both sides by 2. So notice 16 divided by 2 is 8, and that's going to equal 1x. So x-intercept is 8, 0. Y-intercept, set the x equal to 0. So I get 8y equals -16 plus 2 times 0. And all that 0 is doing every time, if you notice, is it's just canceling out the variable altogether, right? It's just turning it into a big 0. So 8y equals -16 plus 2 times 0 is 0. So then I get 8y, -16 plus 0 is -16. And then divide both sides by 8. So y'all, that cancels, giving me my 1y like I needed. -16 divided by 8 is a -2. So my y-intercept is 0, -2. So let's see. I can see them right there. So our number 5, x-axis, y-axis. My x-intercept is 8, 0. So go right over here to 8. Stay at 0 for the y. Y-intercept is 0, -2. So starting at 0, go down to -2. So y'all got my 2 points, and then just draw your line. All righty. Second method to graphing that we're going to learn today. We're going to graph by using the slope and the y-intercept. Now, I really love this method if it's already solved for the y. Because if it's solved for the y, you got everything you need and you just go on with it. If it's not solved for the y, it's a little trickier because you got to do a little bit of math to get to the point you need. So, graph by using the sloping intercept, we're looking at this. Y equals mx plus b. The number in front of the x, where the m is, that's your slope. And where the b is, that's your y-intercept. And the y-intercept will be 0, comma, B, whatever that point is, okay? So as long as you got it solved for the Y, this is going to be the quickest way to graph where you don't have to do no figuring out at all. So to graph using the slope and y-intercept, first thing you want to do, you want to plot the y-intercept because they're giving you the y-intercept. So plot the y-intercept. Remember, that'll be the point 0, B, and B is whatever that last number is. Now remember, when you plot the y-intercept, at that point, you're going to be on the y-axis. Now, we're going to use the slope to get to the next point. So I'm going to plot the y-intercept from there. So, and then from there. Okay. From there, we're going to use the slope to get to the next point. So the first thing we do using the slope, move up or down. So if it's positive, I'm going to move up. If it's negative, I'm going to move down. I'm going to move up or down according to the top number of the slope. Now, I'm not putting my point in, so don't put point yet. Because once I move up or down according to the top number of the slope, I'm going to move right according to the bottom number of the slope. So if your slope is negative, keep that up top. Okay? Keep all negatives up top. So you're either going to move up or down according to the top number. Then you're going to move right according to the bottom number. Then put a point where you stop. Okay, so then you put a point where you stop. So 2 steps. Plot that y-intercept. Then from there, we're going to use the slope to get to the second point. And y'all, you got 2 points then, draw the line. Okay, draw the line right through them 2 points. So let's play with some of these. So the next few examples I'm going to do, we're going to graph using the slope and y-intercept. Let me reset the camera here. All righty, so this will be our number 6 in the homework. Graph using the slope and y-intercept. All right, so this is like y'all's number 6. Y equals 5/3 x plus 6. All right, so the y-intercept is this 6. So remember, that is really 0, 6. That is our y-intercept. My slope, which is m stands for slope in math, is 5/3. So since this is a positive slope, I'm going to go up 5 when I get to this y-intercept. I'm going to go up 5 from there, and then the bottom always moves to the right. So this will go right 3. So remember, here is our number 6 right here. So here's my x-axis and my y-axis. So my y-intercept was 6. So on the y-axis, I move up here to 6 and put my first dot. Now my slope is 5/3. So that means since the top number is positive, there's not even a negative on this one. So since the top number is positive, I'm going to go up 5 from that 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to put me at 11 up here. So I need another space. And then the bottom always goes to the right 3. So I'm going to go right 1, 2, 3. So I got my second point where I landed, and I draw the line. Now remember, 5/3 is a positive slope. And when you're done, positive slopes go uphill from left to right, okay? So it goes uphill. All right, y'all, number 7, the same thing, but they're using different language on this one. This one says f of x equals -8/5x minus 8. All right, so remember, f of x really means y. So this is still y equals -8/5 x minus 8. My y-intercept is the -8, so I'm going to start at 0, -8 for my y-intercept. My slope is a -8/5. So -8/5 means I'm going to go down 8, but the 5 is still positive, so it's going to go right 5. So the negatives go to the top, okay? So let me graph this on the math lab paper here for us on this one. So this is the one I'm doing, the -8/5 x minus 8. So my y-intercept is 0, -8. So I'm going to come down. These are going by 2s on this. So I'm going to put my y-intercept at -8. Now my slope is a -8/5. So let's go. So from there, I'm going down 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. That puts me at -16. And then right 5. So I'll go right 2, 4, 5 is about halfway through. Once we put that second point, Math Lab will draw a line. Now notice, this line's going downhill left to right because we had a negative slope. So notice the slope gives you the direction of those lines. Positive goes uphill, negative's going downhill. All right, y'all, this one has x plus 3y equals 12. So we got x plus 3y equals 12. So if we're going to graph this using the slope and y-intercept, we got to solve it for the y. The y's got to be over here, and then our x's and intercepts on the right side. So to get the 3y by itself, we're going to subtract x. So the x's cancel there, bring down the 3y. Now I'm going to put this in the same order so that I got the mx plus b type stuff. So to do that, put the x's first. That's a -x. And since the 12 is positive, we make that a plus 12. Now the 3y needs to be a 1y. So divide everybody by 3. Now 3 divided by 3 gives me a 1y. Now, y'all, what I'm going to do here, since the x don't have a number in front of it, treat it like a -1. So that's going to give you a -1/3 x plus 12 divided by 3 is 4. So notice our y-intercept to be 0, 4. That's where we're going to start at. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Put my first dot. My slope, my m is a -1/3. So the negative stays up top. So from 4, I go down 1, which puts me at 3. The bottom number we always keep positive. and move right 3 spaces. So I went down 1 and right 3. So notice negative slope, once again, goes downhill. All right, let me do this one down here, y'all. This one, f of x equals 1/3 x minus 2. Remember, that's the same thing as y equals 1/3 x minus 2. Just replace the f of x with the y. So this one don't need no work. It's already solved. So my y-intercept would be 0, -2. So notice if you're subtracting the 2, we treat that like a -2 on our intercept, okay? And then my m is 1/3. So let's start at 0, -2 over here. So these are going down by ones. So -1, -2 will be my first point. My slope is 1/3. So remember the top number goes up or down, bottom number goes right. So since that's a +1, I'm going to go up 1 and get on -1 here, and then right 3. 1, 2, 3. So notice I'm at -1, 3. But my slope went from here and it went up 1 and right 3. So positive slope goes uphill, left to right. All righty, y'all, next, we're going to look at special lines. So we got 2 special lines we're going to look at. The first one is x equals some number a. Notice this has no y variable in it. So this has no y variable. So what that means is when you got x equals a number, this is a vertical line. In which every ordered pair, that means every point on this line, every ordered pair has a x value of a. Okay. So if you was going to make a table for this line, you would come in, and if you were just picking 2 points to draw your line, this says every ordered pair has an x value of a. So whatever a is, every one of these x values will be a. I don't care what you put over here for the y. You can use 0, 1, 2, 3. It don't matter. All the x's have to be whatever this says up here, okay? So this will graph as a vertical line, up and down. And if you notice, if you're on a graph, when you come left, say my x was -1. If I went to -1, I'd be at -1, 0, -1, 1, -1, 2, -1, 3. Only thing changing on that line is going to be the y values, okay? So the first special line is x equals a. So I'll put a 1 by that one. Second special line is something like y equals a. Notice this one has no x variable. And y'all, let me say another thing about this horizontal line first. This horizontal line, the slope of a vertical, that's a vertical line. But the slope of a vertical line, is what we call undefined. Because if you was looking at the slope formula, your x1 minus x2, well, those would both be a, and that'd give you a 0 in the bottom of your fraction. So the slope of a vertical line is undefined. So now let's look at the second line, y equals a. This has no x variable, so this is going to be a horizontal line in which every ordered pair has a y value of a. So no matter what the a is, the y values will all be that. So here's your y's. So your a will be a. No matter what the x's are, all the y values will be a. So what that does, that creates a horizontal line going left to right. So y'all, if the y's are the same on top, you get a 0 on top of the slope formula. So that means the slope of a horizontal line is 0. So when you're walking on the floor of a building, it's horizontal like this, and it has a slope of 0. If you start going uphill, you start going up a positive slope. If you go downhill, you start having a negative slope. So let me graph some of these using those problems. So this will be my number 10. All right, so I'll move my camera up. All right, so number 10 here wants me to graph x equals 4. And then they want me to tell what the slope is. So remember, this is x equals 4. So if you was to make a table, all the x values would have to be 4. No matter how many x's you pick, they got to be 4 every time. Now, any two numbers will work here for the y value. So the easiest numbers for me are 0 and 1. So the first point would be 4, 0. So remember, going right 4 and stay at 0 for the y. Second point I did was 4, 1. So go right 4 and up 1. At that point, I can draw my vertical line through them 2 points. So you could have picked 2. You would have went right 4 and up 2, right 4 and up 3. Any point you pick has had that x value of 4. You could have went 4 and -1, 4, -2. So notice, it don't matter what we pick for the y values. So remember, this is going straight up and down. Now, I'll show you why this is undefined using the slope formula. Remember, that is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So my y2 up here would be 1 minus my y1 was 0 over 4 for x1 minus 4 for x2 minus x1. But notice on top you get a 1 over 0. Since we got a 0 in the bottom, that means this is undefined. Slope is undefined because it's not moving left to right. It's just a vertical line, okay? So remember, vertical lines, undefined. All right, 11, they give me y equals -1. All right, so let's see. If you're doing a table for that one, every y value has to be -1 because that's what they're telling me here. Y has to equal -1. So you can pick any numbers you want here. So let me try different numbers this time. How about 2 and 3? So notice I'm going to plot 2, -1. So go right 2 and down 1. I'm going to plot 3, -1. Go right 3, down 1. So if you notice, it's just a straight line going across the -1 value on the y. So we said a horizontal line for its slope. So if you was doing that problem with the slope, you would have y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now you don't have to do this every time. I'm just showing you why vertical lines are undefined and horizontal lines. Let's see what we get. Y2 minus y1 is -1 minus -1. X2 is 3 minus x1 is 2. Well, notice -1 minus a -1, that's like -1 plus 1, which is 0. 3 minus 2 on the bottom gives me a 1. Remember, 0 divided by 1 is 0. So you can't divide 1 by 0. That's undefined. But you can divide 0 by 1, which equals 0. So for this one, M is 0 for the horizontal lines. All right, number 12, same thing, but look, they're giving me f of x equals 1. But remember, f of x really stands for y. So this is y equals 1. So if you're going to graph it, no matter what, all the y values are 1. So y'all let me use my 0 and 1 again for my x's. So I'm going to plot 0, 1. So 0, 1 is straight up. I'm going to plot 1, 1, right 1, up 1. So notice, I get a horizontal line like I do every time I got a y equals a number. And that means the slope of this, m, which stands for slope, since it's horizontal, the slope is still going to be 0. All righty, then they had one more of these. So the last one was y equals 4. All right, y'all, so here's my table that I would plot. Y has to be 4 every time. So hell, let me do a negative number this time, -2 for the x, and then I'll use a 0 for the second x. So I'm going to plot -2, 4. So go left to -2 and up to 4. Then I'm going to plot 0, 4. So 0, go up 4. So y'all, I got my 2 points. Draw my line. Since that's a horizontal line, anytime we got y equals a number, our slope is 0. All right, y'all, so that's a trick on that one. All righty, so let me get my next page ready. All right, y'all, so the last part of this deals with determining. So we're going to determine if 2 lines are parallel or perpendicular. Perpendicular. Okay, so here's the thing. If 2 lines are parallel, we'll look at parallel first. If 2 lines are parallel, then they must have the same slopes. That means the slope of your first line, A over B, has to exactly equal the slope of your second line. So all I got to do is know what the slopes are to determine if they are parallel. Okay, so perpendicular. Now we'll say this, parallel is when 2 lines both look the same. So that's why they got to have the same slope, because this one's got to go up at the same rate the second line does, okay? Now, if 2 lines are perpendicular, then their slopes are negative reciprocals. So what I mean by negative reciprocals if 1 is a positive a over b, then the second line slope has to be a negative b over a. You flip the fraction and change the sign for them to be perpendicular. Now, perpendicular lines, if one was going up like that, the other one would go down like that. And perpendicular lines make a 90-degree angle in them, okay? So that's what these exercises are going to do. So here's the first question they want to know. Determine what are the graphs of the pair of lines are parallel. So this is like number 14. So they're giving me x plus 7 equals y. Y minus x equals -3. So they want me to find the slope of the first line, find the slope of the second line, and then determine whether they're parallel. So let's do the first line. So the first line, we got x plus 7 equals y. Well, y'all, this one's already solved. They just got it in the wrong side. So we can rearrange it and put the y over here, and then that'll equal to x plus 7. But either way, these mean the same thing, okay? Because the y is by itself on this, just like the y is by itself over here. So there's not a number in front of the x. Because remember, the number in front of the x gives me my slope. So since there's no number in front of the x, we treat it like a 1. Okay, second line. Second line, I got y minus x equals -3. All right, this one, I got to get the y by itself by taking care of that negative x. So to move that, we add an x to both sides. So I get my y. Those x's cancel out. Now I'm just going to put it in order. I'm going to put the x first and then the -3. So once again, I got an x by itself that don't have a number in front. So we treat that number like a 1. So the slope of the first line is 1. Slope of the second line is 1. Only thing difference, this one's crossing the y-axis at 7. This one's crossing the y-axis at a -3. But they still will be parallel. So this is yes, they are parallel. All right, y'all. So that's a trick on those. Get those y equals mx plus b form, and then whatever number's in front of our x's is going to be our slopes, okay? So same thing with 15. Determine whether these lines are parallel. I got y plus 3 equals -2x. I got 2x minus y equals -3. So remember, I got to find the slopes of both of these lines. So here's my first line. Y plus 3 equals -2x. I need to get this y by itself by subtracting 3. So notice I get my y, those cancel. And then to put it in order, I'm going to put -2x minus 3. So the slope on this is a -2. Second line, we got 2x minus y equals -3. All right, get the negative y by itself by subtracting 2x. Well, y'all, the x's cancel on the left side. I get -y equals. So y'all gonna put these in order. -2x, and then bring down my -3. But remember, the y has to be positive. It can't be negative. So you're going to come in and divide everybody by that -1. So notice that gives me a positive 1y. Negative 2 divided by negative 1 makes that a 2x. And then minus 3 divided by negative 1 makes that a positive 3. So the m is a positive 2 on that one. This one was a negative 2. So since they're not exactly the same, this would be no, these lines are not parallel. All right, y'all. 16. So we got 2 more of these. Now 16, they want to know if so this example, determine whether the graphs of the 2 equations are perpendicular. Remember, perpendicular, if one's positive, the other one has to be flipped upside down and negative, okay? All right, y'all, to give me y equals 5x minus 2 for my first line, and then 2y equals 7 minus x. All right, so the first line is already solved. Y equals 5x minus 2. So the slope of my first line is a 5. So now my second line, I got 2y equals 7 minus x. So I'm just going to put this in order real quick. So I'm going to have 2y equals, I'm going to put the negative x first and then the plus 7. So I'm just rearranging the right side so I can get the mx plus b form, okay? Now that needs to be a 1y, so divide everybody. Now remember, that's like a 1 in front of that x, and then 7 divided by 2. So remember, a negative x is like a negative 1x. So then I got a top number for my fraction, okay? So the 2's cancel, making a y equals negative 1/2 x plus 7/2. All right, so the m on this one is a negative 1/2. So y'all, this slope was 5. And the opposite of 5, its reciprocal would be 1/5, and we would make that a negative 1/5. But we got a negative 1/2. So these slopes are not negative reciprocals of each other. So no, those lines are not perpendicular. All right, y'all, so let's try 17. Determine whether the graphs of the lines are perpendicular. I got x plus 2y equals 7. I got 2x plus 4y equals 9. All right, so let's solve the first line first. So the first line is x plus 2y equals 7. I'm going to get the 2y by itself by subtracting x. So those cancel. I get 2y. So I'm just going to put the x first. So that gives me my negative x plus 7. And then divide everybody by 2. Remember, that's like a negative 1x. All right, y'all. So breaking that down, 2 divided by 2 gives me 1y. Can't do nothing with that. That's going to stay negative 1/2 x. Can't do nothing with that. That's going to stay 7/2. But what I needed was my m, which is a negative 1/2. All right, y'all. Second line, 2x plus 4y equals 9. All right, y'all. So here we need to get the y by itself. So I'm going to subtract 2x. So let's see what I get. X's cancel. I get 4y equals negative 2x plus 9. So I'm just putting them in order. Now divide by 4. All right, y'all. So that's going to cancel, giving me a 1y again. Negative 2 over 4 reduces to a negative 1/2 x plus 9/4. So the m on this one is a negative 1/2, which means these are the same. So these lines would be parallel, but they're not perpendicular. All right, y'all. So both of those ended up being no. So let me show you an example of one that is perpendicular. So say I had y equals 2/3 x plus 7. And I had y equals negative 3/2 x minus 2. Notice the m on my first line would be 2/3. The m of my second line would be negative 3/2. So notice how the negative 3/2 is opposite in sign than the positive slope. And this was 2/3. This one's reciprocated. And I get a negative 3/2. Okay. So to be perpendicular, this is what's got to happen. Okay. All right, y'all. So that's all the 2.6. So I'm going to stop my share and stop the video.